in interesting times, today's stories. Made in Vietnam, Vingroup launches its first smartphones. Yemen rebels return to Sana'a after UN-led talks. A gas explosion rips through Ukraine flats. Pompeo calls China's detention of Canadians unacceptable. Canada's foreign minister promises a political due process on Huawei's executive. The Church of Christ donates 100 boxes of food to the Edmonton Food Bank. Plus, Saskatoon premiere of the EBC film Guerrero wows moviegoers. And for EBC Sports, game details on the NBA Raptors versus the Golden State Warriors. This is Eagle News Canada, bringing you stories from around the globe. I am Arnie Aquino. Vietnam's largest private conglomerate Vingroup unveiled its first made-in-Vietnam mobile phones in the fast-growing country, where it will face tough competition from tech giants like Samsung, Oppo, and Apple. The company run by Vietnam's richest man has built its core business in the real estate and retail sectors, but has branched out to include car manufacturing, gene decoding, and now mobile phones. The company's mobile phone subsidiary, VinSmart, launched 4 phone models priced between $120 and $280.
Mạnh mẽ, mong muốn mang tới cho khách hàng cơ hội trải nghiệm sản phẩm Việt Nam chất lượng cao ngay trong.
The company said its factory in the port city of Hai Phong has the capacity to produce 5 million phones per year and could expand to smart TVs and smart homes. Vingroup acquired a 51% stake in Spanish consumer electronics maker BQ earlier this year, which will help with product development. VinSmart announced a patent licensing agreement with U.S. chipmaker Qualcomm for mobile phone terminals. VinSmart will face tough competition in fast-growing Vietnam, where middle-class consumers with burgeoning budgets are buying Samsung and Apple phones. Several smaller Vietnamese firms already make their own mobile phones, but none have taken off in the country, where about a third of the country's 93 million people are smartphone users. Samsung held 37% of the market in the second quarter of this year, while Oppo had 22% and Apple had about 5%, according to Counterpoint analysis firms. VinSmart's phones are unlikely to be directly competing with expensive Apple models, and the company will struggle to unseat Samsung right away, said Kenny Liu, a telecommunications analyst at Fitch Solutions. One major leg up for VinSmart will be easy access to retail space. The company already has over 1,200 supermarkets and convenience stores all over the country. Vingroup is owned by Pham Nhat Vuong, a press-shy billionaire who started his career selling dried noodles in Ukraine. He is worth an estimated $6.7 billion, according to Forbes. His Vingroup empire includes housing, resorts, farms, schools, hospitals, shopping malls, and cars. Vietnam is one of Asia's fastest-growing economies, with GDP growth hitting above 5% for the past 5 years. That growth has largely been driven by exporting cheaply manufactured goods from Nike's shoes and H&M t-shirts, and increasingly tech products like Samsung phones and Intel processors as it moves up the value chain. Around 60% of Samsung's phones are made in Vietnam, and last year Samsung products accounted for about 20% of Vietnam's exports.
Chắc chắn là em sẽ mua nó bởi vì là những cái tính năng, thứ nhất là đấy, và thứ hai là cái chế độ selfie của nó rất là mượt, vì em vừa trải nghiệm nó tự lấy độ sáng rồi là làm đẹp bức ảnh rất là vừa chân thật mà sắc nét nữa.
A Houthi rebel delegation returned to Yemen's insurgent-controlled capital of Sana'a after wrapping up an initial round of breakthrough UN-brokered peace talks in Sweden. The Kuwaiti plane carrying the delegation touched down at 11 a.m. at Sana'a International Airport, where flights are heavily restricted due to the conflict between the rebels and a Saudi-led coalition that backs the government. A crowd of some 400 people, including rebel officials and civilians, were there to greet the returnees on the runway before they headed into a reception hall. The round of talks in Sweden were the first steps on the road to peace in addressing the humanitarian situation in war war-torn Yemen, he added. A guarantee of the Iran-backed rebels' safe return to Sana'a was a key condition in their participation in talks this week in the Swedish town of Rimbo. Negotiations hosted by Kuwait in 2016 broke down after 108 days and left rebel delegates stranded in Oman for 3 months. Talks set for September faltered when the Houthis refused to leave Sana'a, which the rebels have controlled since 2014, accusing the UN of failing to guarantee their delegation's return. UN envoy Martin Griffiths had accompanied the rebels aboard a Kuwaiti plane on December 4 for their outbound flight to Sweden for the week of negotiations. In a tweet on Friday, Houthi spokesman Mohammed Abdel Salam thanked Griffiths, Oman, Kuwait, and Sweden for the facilitation and success of the negotiations. Impoverished Yemen had been mired in fighting between the Houthis rebels and troops loyal to President Abdrabbo Mansour Hadi since 2014. The war escalated in 2015 when a Saudi-led military coalition stepped in on the government side. The conflict had since killed nearly 10,000 people, according to the World Health Organization, but other rights groups believe the toll to be far higher. Yemen's warring parties agreed to a ceasefire for a vital port in a series of breakthroughs. If implemented, the deal for Hodeidah port, a key gateway for aid and food imports, could bring relief to a country where 14 million people stand on the brink of famine. Saudi Arabia and its allies accused the rebels of arms smuggling from Iran through Hodeidah and the capital Sana'a, charges Tehran has denied. The Saudi-led military coalition controls Yemen's maritime borders and airspace. The two sides also reached a mutual understanding on Yemen's third city Taiz, under control of pro-government forces but besieged by the rebels, to facilitate the delivery of aid. They also agreed a mass prisoner swap, exchanging more than 15,000 names, and are set to hold a new round of talks next month. Another member of the delegation, Yara Nouri, said he hoped the agreements would be implemented in the coming days. No deal has been reached on the future of Sana'a's airport, close to commercial flights for nearly 3 years.
أتمنى قبل المفاوضات التي في شهر يناير أن يلتزموا الطرفين بما تم الاتفاق عليه. وإذا إذا توافقوا على ما اتفقوا عليه تبدأ المفاوضات الجديدة.
The airport will be discussed at the next round of talks, the UN's Griffiths said.
ولكن المفاوضات كانت الأمانة وفي نظري خاصة وفي نظر الشعب اليمني إنها مخيبة لآمال اليمنيين كثيرا. تمام. لأننا كنا نخاطبهم جميعا بأن هذه المفاوضات فاشلة وحتبقى فاشلة، وأنا أؤكد لكم بأنها فاشلة لأن العدو هذا لا يريدنا أن نعيش في سلام.
A gas explosion ripped through a block of flats in a town near Kyiv on Friday, officials said, with at least one person injured and fears that more may be trapped under the rubble. The explosion in the 5-story building occurred shortly after 9 a.m. in the town of Pastiv, 70 kilometers or 40 miles west of the capital, Ukraine's Emergency Situation Service said in a statement, adding that rescue workers were at the scene. It said, quote, "As a result of the explosion, there was destruction on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. So far, we know of one wounded. People may also be under slabs that collapsed under the 4th and 5th floors," the head of the local health department said on his Facebook page. Pictures posted to the website of the Emergency Situation Service showed the corner of the apartment block completely destroyed, with balconies ripped out and debris scattered on snow-covered ground.
Взрыв произошел от газа. Жертв вроде бы пока немає. Одну дівчинку знайти не можуть. Вона толком не знає. Всі поки місце евакуїровані. Далі, що воно буде далі, ніхто не знає.
Up next, Pompeo calls China detention of Canadians unacceptable. Canada Foreign Minister promises a political due process on Huawei's executive. The Church of Christ donates 100 boxes of food to the Edmonton Food Bank. These and more when Eagle News Canada returns. We will be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News Canada. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called on China on Friday. He called to release 2 Canadians whose detention had been seen as retaliation for the arrest in Vancouver of a Chinese executive on a U.S. request.
The unlawful detention of 2 Canadian citizens is unacceptable. They ought to be returned. The United States has stood for that, whether they're our citizens or citizens of other countries. We ask all nations of the world to treat other citizens properly, and the detention of these 2 Canadian citizens in China ought to end.
Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland promises a political due process on an executive detained on a U.S. request as she held talks in Washington.
We discussed China and the case of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou, building on a conversation that Secretary Pompeo and I began soon after her arrest. We all agree that the most important thing we can do is to uphold the rule of law, ensure that Ms. Meng's right to due process is respected, and that the current judicial process in Canada remains apolitical.
Members of the Church of Christ, or Iglesia Ni Cristo, reaches out to the city of Edmonton by donating 100 boxes of food to the Edmonton Food Bank. Thomas I. Likeness with the details.
A lot of people take a trip to the grocery store for granted, but for thousands of people in the Alberta capital of Edmonton, buying food is something they sometimes cannot afford. That's where the Edmonton Food Bank comes in. Food Bank volunteer Braden Valliere says a wide range of people often show up on their doorstep.
Right, it's just life, costs money, right? And sometimes you lose your job, sometimes you can't, your car breaks down and you need to feed your kids and you have to decide, what do I do? Fix the car, feed the kids, and it's just basic people, they need it. Right, Ernie?
Just ordinary people.
Yeah, everyday people. It's not what you'd think. Some people think it's like people just take advantage of it. Really, it's not.
Also contacting the food bank are a number of organizations such as the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ. The church donated more than 100 boxes of food, which Valliere says shows the commitment the church has to the communities it is in.
Oh yeah, thank you. Like, people like this are, they make the world go around, they help each other, they actually care about other people, and, without the help of folks like this, the food bank couldn't exist, and, wouldn't be able to feed as many people as they do on a monthly basis, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Father Glendo Baitan is the Assistant District Minister of Canada 6, which includes the Edmonton region. He says it's important to help the poor.
This is in line with the teaching of our Almighty God written in Proverbs 3:27 that we do good things to our fellow men.
Brother Glendo says members of the church are always ready to help out those facing tough times.
Many brethren, most of them are officers, as you can see from my background, they are always united. I would say ready and willing to unite with the church administration, not only in this kind of activity. In fact, many of our activities with the aim of not only strengthening the faith of those who are members of the church, but also reaching out to those who are not members of the church, helping them with their needs in this life, and most especially, given the chance, also with their needs when it comes to their spiritual lives.
The Edmonton Food Bank serves about 20,000 people per month. Today's donation by the Church of Christ will provide about 3,000 meals for people who would otherwise go hungry. Reporting from Edmonton, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. I'm one with 25.
Coming up, EBC film Guerrero Saskatoon premiere wows moviegoers. Game details on the NBA Raptors versus the Golden State Warriors. Eagle News Canada will return shortly.
Hi guys, I'm Ariel.
And I'm Kenneth. And we're your new hosts for The Break Room.
So please watch us every Monday at 7:30 to 8 in the evening. We are one with 25.
This is Eagle News Canada. I am Arnie Aquino. Guerrero, an EBC full-length film, held its Saskatoon premiere, wowing moviegoers there. Eagle News correspondent Justine Kusi with the details. Justine?
For moviegoers, here is another fun-filled movie to watch. We are here right now at Rainbow Cinema to witness the film showing of Guerrero here in Saskatoon. Let's see how excited the people are.
You know, I really enjoyed it. This movie was very inspirational. It has something for everyone, so you can definitely invite your friends and family, and we'll definitely have a good time.
It was a really, really good movie. It was super hilarious, and we learned a lot from it. One of the lessons that I've learned from the movie is that we should never give up, even though we are knocked down to the ground. Just keep trying.
But the whole overall production, I guess what I would say to the producers is that it was really high quality. What really got to me was the background music. It really fit with the whole message of the movie, and it really touched the heartstrings of the people.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. Do you like it?
Yeah. Thank you for the movie.
Reporting here from Saskatoon for Eagle News, I'm Justine Kusi. I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Justine. We've heard such good reviews about the film, and I'm looking forward to watching it with my friends. What else do others enjoy besides movies? Basketball. EBC's Christine Era takes us to a very exciting game between Toronto and the Golden State. Take a look.
Tonight was more than just Toronto versus Golden State. It was more than just the first place team in the league versus the reigning NBA champions. Tonight offered a taste of what some have said could be the matchup in this year's finals. With the Raptors all but ready to go with the full lineup, they controlled much of the game, but the three-time champs show why they were the three-time champs. Clawing their way back, forcing OT with a tying shot with less than 5 seconds left in the game. A lot of hype and excitement came prior to this game, and when it was all said and done, the game not only lived up to that hype, but surpassed it. With the game being tied up in the final moments, Kevin Durant scored a game-high 51 points, but the Raptors prevailed to a 131-128 win. Fans can only imagine what kind of series this will be like if they meet in the finals. From the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Canada, I'm Christine Era, 1 with 25.
Thanks, Christine. That is this week's Eagle News Canada. Join us next week for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.ph and eaglenewslive.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenewsph. Thank you for watching. I am Arnie Aquino. I am 1 with 25.